So today, I just want to give you an agenda of what the session would be like. It's a very specific session that we have planned with Avalon Meta. The target cohort will mostly be people who are college students or content creators or freelancers. I'll probably help them gauge an understanding as to how they can go about figuring out if sales is for them, if they're already in a business where they need certain skills that requires them to be actively involved in sales, then what are the tips and tricks around it, and give you a different perception altogether towards what sales is, can be, and how it can probably help you from. Can you hear me? Your face cam, your screen, audio, everything checks out perfect. Thank you so much, guys. Yep. So before we actually get to the session or start the session, for 5 minutes, I'll take any questions that you might have, and there is a dedicated Q&A session towards the end of this masterclass as well. But before actually we start the session, I don't want to waste anyone's time, and let's use that time extremely productively. So any questions that you might have, please put on the chat window. I'm actually scrolling through the uh, I have just started my career in sales. I have to sell apps to school. How should I approach school? So the best way in this is depending on the company you're working for. So uh, since you're starting something, right? Even if it's a sales organization, the first step is to build supply. So make sure you have a very clear and very objective sales funnel. You have a lead sheet which has enough number of schools. Then you start approaching schools and try working top down. If principal or the headmaster or the father, whatever you call it, if they are the decision makers, try to reach out to them through contacts, through referrals, and then pitch your product rather than going through teachers and all the way up. So in terms of anything, just have a very solid supply. How do I find leads, the target audience? Is there any tool? Oh, LinkedIn is one of the biggest tools. Actually, leads are everywhere. Today, we live in a digital society where each and every person of your target cohort is or eventually becomes your lead. So the more you can document, or the more you can create data, the more leads you'll have. Also, check out this website called Kaggle.com. It's Kaggle. So a lot of people research about the markets and they put out the data sets on that website. You can actually download those data sets for absolutely free of cost. Will you provide some actionable steps like some tools, etc.? Not in this session. This session would be, I will be deep diving into very superficial topics which will help you gauge a clear understanding about sales. Mm, will you be covering B2B sales? Again, not in this session, but I will be, if you have certain questions around B2B sales, certain objective questions around B2B sales, save them for later. Mm, how sales have changed with time and why? Oh, it's evolved quite extensively. I will be talking about that in this session. I want to be an entrepreneur. Should I learn sales? Yes, definitely yes, because 70% or more than 70% of today's CEOs, right? They started their career with sales. A couple of examples would be Mark Cuban, Warren Buffett. They were all sales reps. Even Steve Jobs was a sales rep when they start their career. Mm, not a question, but I want to thank you this session. Oh, thank you so much. I sell digital marketing services that vary hugely in pricing. How does the convincing work there to pitch my service as a niche? So, Shrenik, if you're an individual content creator and a freelancer, so I have a very dedicated session for you. You will really enjoy this session. Will calling and mailing work in this? I'm not going to be talking about those aspects because those aspects would need a lot of time, a lot of detail. So I don't want to give you any superficial knowledge. How do I get into sales as a part-time from home? There are a lot of commission-based work from home jobs, but it's not going to help you. They're just going to make you burn out and eventually you won't like sales. So if you want to start sales, get full-time into it, get into a company, interview into sales companies, and then figure out if you're actually meant for it or not. Now, how do you know that you're actually meant for sales is what I'm going to be talking about in today's session. What time is it? 7:06. We have 4 more minutes before I can take these questions. I wanted to ask you that how do we get high-paying clients to whom we can sell digital marketing services? By figuring out who those, like the very simple answer is if you have a supply. Now, a lot of people say that I want this sort of clients, that sort of clients. Like I want Apples, I want Googles, but you need to create a good supply of 200, 300 leads of these high paying clients. Then you target the first cohort of 10 high paying clients, figure out what your conversion rate is. If you're able to convert three, two, or even one, right? Then you know for 20 clients, you need 200 leads. For 200 clients, you need 200 and 200, 20,000 leads. So that's how you work around. So just by asking, how do I get high paying clients? The answer would be figure out a structure. If you can create, if you have enough supply of high paying clients, out of that supply, you'll be able to convert a few. As yes, I will be sharing a very scientific structure to pitch to clients. I'm a freelancer and I want to capture the US and European clients. I will give you the answer. This is what I'll be covering. How shall I entertain entrepreneurs approaching me for the first time? Should I simply send them my contact form to fill in the details? If you have a very solid content, which actually has a very, very clearly defined call to action, and if that call to action compels them to fill the form, these three steps, right? If your content is strong enough, Nikita, that compels them to fill the form, then it makes sense to have a form based lead generation process. Because what happens for me to actually go through any sort of content, it'll take me 5 to 10 seconds. For me to actually fill a form will take me easily about a minute to 2 minutes. So am I ready to devote that time while I'm just scrolling through multiple content? I'm not sure. But if your content is that good that compels me to actually fill the form, then definitely. So try it multiple times unless you get like, start with, make sure you have 10 entries in the form, then you have 20 entries, and be articulate with your form. Don't be subjective, be as objective as possible. I get tensed while revealing the price to clients. How to overcome it? The answer is like, even when I started my career, I was really tensed. Just convince yourself that more than the price, the value that you're offering. So once you're clear with the value, price becomes secondary. So be very, very clear what value you're bringing, and try to encapsulate value in on terms: financial value, emotional value, brand value, future value. If you combine all of these things, the price will seem very, very small. I am, this is done. This is done. I have a start totally based on sales. Kavish, good luck with that. I wish you all the best. How to overcome the fear of rejection in sales? Uh, I mean, you can't overcome the fear of rejection. You need to accept rejection. That the more rejection you will get, uh, don't get disappointed. So how I used to get encouraged by rejections is every time I used to get rejection, right? I used to document as to why they rejected me. So now, let's say if you've been rejected 20, 25 times, you have 25 data sets as to why you were rejected. Now, if you can overcome those data sets, and you can figure out a process that I do not repeat this, now you have an entire structure. This structure will give you a conversion rate. Now, what a conversion rate does is, let's say if I have a conversion rate of 15%, that means for every 6 clients I'm pitching, I'm closing one. You will get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rejections. Then you know something good is definitely gonna happen, right? So that is what is your I would say a motivating factor, because now you have a process, you have data sets, and you have your own conversion rate. So rejections will add more value, because each rejection is a data set for you. Is digital market a must for sales exec? No, not at all. Uh, uh, like, even if you have superficial knowledge enough to share valuable inputs with your clients, I think that's good. Will you be talking about your experience too? Yes, yes, we definitely. I have a startup totally based on sales. Okay, I think it's 7:10. So I'm going to be starting with what I have prepared for y'all. So this is what the agenda is going to be. I'm going to be setting the clear agenda. First would be my experience. It's very, very essential for you to know, be it your mentor or be it any sort of moderator, what credibility I bring to the table, so that once we reach the QA part towards the end, you have really object questions to ask me. And if there are questions or if there is anything that you can gain out of my experience, I'd be more than happy to share. Now, this is a very, very common topic that I get asked pretty often. How did I evolve? How did I move from, how did I transform engineering to sales? Because I've done engineering. I am an engineer by education, but a salesman by profession. Then, since most of you in this cohort are quite young, I'm not sure what is the exact cohort, but what are the early signs that you can identify that in the future you'll have a very, very successful career in sales? Just one second. Let me just, yeah, sorry. Yeah. And there is a specific topic on sales and content creation. Then what are the top skills, in my opinion, that you should definitely have if you're actively involved in sales? Then I have a major announcement for everyone. And the last part of this particular masterclass would be Q&A. So let me just see till where I've taken the questions, till Kavish. After that, I'll be taking all the questions uh, towards the end in the Q&A session. Now, moving on to the first part, what is my story? So I have created this table. Now, my approach towards most problems in my life is by having a pictorial representation towards things, by making graphs, by making tables. So I've made this table for you to understand what I've done in my career. I have closely about 7 years of experience in working. Out of those, the first 8 months, that was right after college, right after engineering, I got into Accenture as a software developer. And the moment I entered Accenture, it took me 6 months of actual working, because first month was training, 15 days were interviews for which project I'd be best fit for, and 15 days I spent on the bench. There is a bench period in most of the bigger firms which do mass recruitment. Now, if you see, I have columns like energy hustle. What do I mean by energy hustle? At that point, if I had a hustle scale of 10, how much of my energy or hustle was I actually using? How steep or how good was my learning curve in that particular firm? And what was my overall job satisfaction? And why did I give these numbers or give these objective scores for you to understand? So talking about Accenture, I had, like, I was right after college. I had so much energy, but the kind of work, the kind of people I was surrounded with, I was only able to, I think, use 40% of my total energy hustle. Rest, I was just wailing away time. I was going for these parties. I wasn't actually learning a lot. So even my learning curve is 5 out of 10. And that led to an overall job satisfaction of 5 out of 10. That's why, if you see, I quit within 6 months of working. And it wasn't really a hard decision, because I was very ambitious at that point of my career. And since I was 20, 21, I was actually in a stage where I could take those risks, and even if that risk failed, I had enough time to rebound and bounce back. Now in Zomato, I think Zomato is one of the key companies that played a pivotal role in terms of how my career has shaped. So I spent 4 years, out of which close to about 2.5 years were into sales leadership, and 1.5 years was into individual contribution. Now, what do I mean by individual contribution? I had my own set of clients. I was selling actively. I was managing clients. And post 1.5 years, I was handed a team. Now, in that team, I was responsible for an overall region target for my team, for how to solve their problems, and how do I achieve the my area targets and my team targets. So I didn't have any individual contribution role since then. Now the energy hustle, since it was a very, very fast-paced startup, it was I've given it a score of 9 of 10. Learning curve, I think I learned the most. So a lot of people say that a year in a startup is as good as 2 to 3 years in any other company, which actually is very, very true in the case of Zomato. And my overall job satisfaction was 9 out of 10. Just give me a second. Let me remove this, but I can't see. Yep. Now, later on, I was chosen to lead an entire region that was of North India for Kyofit. So here, I wasn't directly reporting to anyone in my region. My manager used to sit at the headquarters, which was based out of Bangalore. So in my region, I wasn't answerable to anyone. So the only amount of learning that I was gaining was with my peers from different functions, from different industries. The energy, yes, because I had to manage a team of close to about 40, 45 people. So the hustle and energy was always there. Learning curve, I think, since my manager wasn't working very, very closely with me, I couldn't learn a lot because uh, the hierarchy was I was reporting to my manager, the manager was reporting to the CEO of the company. So if I was closer to the manager and CEO, I think I could have learned much better. And in terms of job satisfaction, that's the only reason I give it a 7 out of 10. I gained a lot of, I would say, industry knowledge about, because it was North India. I'd never worked in North India before. So just a fact for y'all. Now, even for Zomato, I am not from any of the cities that I've worked in. So every region that I've worked was a new region for me. I had to start from scratch. I had to develop those contacts. I had to build my network, and I had to prove that even though I don't belong from your city being the client that I'm speaking to, I'm still credible enough, I'm still knowledgeable enough for you to suggest you how to handle your business. So this is one of the key learnings that I've had. I've done that in Bangalore, in Hyderabad, in Philippines, Nagpur, Kochi, Delhi, Gurgaon, Noida. And I'm from Lucknow, born, brought up here, but all these regions were extremely new to me. So that's how I learned very quickly. Now, the second, I have done engineering. So a lot of people have asked me, how did you transform into sales? Because you would have studied something totally differently. And now that you've moved into a field like sales, how do you actually apply your learning? So my very first response has always been that I have never ever tried to transform into something that I'm not. The best way, even I would suggest for someone who is pursuing the technical side of things, would be try to evolve, believe in evolution over transformation. If you look up the definition itself, transformation is you changing from one form to another. That's why transformation. Evolution is you're constantly updating yourselves and adapting to the current scenario of your business. Now, couple of key skills that I have figured that really helped me in terms of uh, evoluting from engineering to sales was, first, in engineering we're taught to have a very logic driven approach towards multiple things, a very structured thought process. So as compared to if you're studying business, because that in that they teach you about a lot of industry facts, a lot of subjectivity is there in business studies. In engineering, there's only objectivity. So that really helped me once I put those skills into sales. Now, most of the sales people that you would have come across, and even I've come across, they ask for trust. Now, if there is a point in your pitch that you get stuck, a lot of people would try to cover that by, sir, you have to trust me, or Mr. X, trust me, I will get this sorted. Now, this is you legit asking for trust. Now, it works sometimes, but most of the times it fails because to a certain extent you're faffing. If logic cannot be used to convince, then you ask for trust, that trust me with this, trust me with this. So I've never supported the trust me approach. What I believe is, as engineers, I've always built things from scratch. So even in trust, right, I like building trust. How do you build trust? By proving that in whatever field, in whatever industry you're in, you have more knowledge than they do. Because as a business owner, they will have knowledge about their business. As an industry rep, you will have knowledge about the entire industry. So if you can share your knowledge in a very, very articulate way, they will listen to you, they will trust you, and then you won't have to go with the trust me approach. Now, again, something that engineering taught me is scientific ways of solving problems. Now, what is a scientific way? It's so any scientist or any experiments, if you conducted in school or in college, what you do in an experiment, you try something, you denote the data points. Again, you bring about some change in your experiment, then you denote the results. Until and unless you have a comprehensive uh, data set as to how many experiments you've done and what is the actual result of it, you won't be able to figure out if it's a successful or a failed experiment. Similarly, in sales, also, if you're trying out new things, just don't try out new things. Try to document each and every step of yours, because once you start doing this, you will have a clear idea as to where you're going right, where you're going wrong, and whatever subjectivity lies in sales, right? you'll be able to convert that subjectivity into objectivity. And that is something that has really, really helped me. And last point, as I've already told you, document as much as you can, because while you're documenting, while you're writing down stuff, you might feel that this is mundane. Why do I actually need to do it? But if you have enough data set, and if you know how to actually look at data objectively, if you can make tables or create tables, I believe that just by recognizing what you've done over the past 2 months or 3 months with that data set, that will give you a unique perception, or multiple perceptions towards what your ways should be. Now, uh, this is something that I would advise to someone who's really early in their careers, or still in college, like second year, third year, or first year of their job, and you're confused that, I like sales, I like everything that there is about sales, but how do I actually know that I'll be good at sales? So I think if I would have met myself probably 7 years or probably 10 years back, these are the things when I think back and I recognize that I had it in me, and that's how it laid the foundation for me, in terms of having an illustrious career in sales. So let me just, I will open this later. Now, the first thing is, like, even if you were a kid or in college, if you have a natural tendency to raise objections, if you're highly inquisitive, if you're highly curious, if you ask a lot of questions, that means until and unless you achieve a fulfilled or meaningful answer, you won't be satisfied. I think that itself is a skill which eventually nurtures into asking or having the ability to ask the right questions. So if you have this in you, so this is now whatever skill I talk about here, you need to think back on your life, and you need to consciously start nurturing it. If you actively want to pursue a career in sales or in business, or anything where you require to sell any aspect of your business. Now, so that is the first thing. Like, I was really inquisitive, I was never satisfied with the answers, I would always have a follow-up question. Now, these things can be irritating, but then that's how you nurture your skill, right? You, over a period of time, you realize when to ask, when not to ask, when to ask the right questions. And this is something for you to actually think upon, like a food for thought for you, if you're in that particular early on in your career. Now, I was a huge fan of English, be it language, be it writing, be it reading. I've been writing poems, articles, journals since I was in class 10th. So, if you have that love for English, be it language, be it writing or reading, you would definitely want to display or demonstrate your skill in terms of to a larger audience. And if you're doing that to a larger audience, you're influencing them. If you're influencing them and they're listening to you, you've sold it to them. So this is the entire structure, right? So if you think that you like reading, writing, don't give it up on that. It's a beautiful habit. And if you don't right now, uh, definitely get into at least one of these, or all of these, in my opinion. Now, I I sense a lot of people would say, reading and language I understand, because it improves your vocabulary, it improves your communication skills. But how does writing help me? So, at any point, right? Even now, when I'm speaking with you, you're listening to me. There are multiple thoughts that are going on in your head. Now, how do you articulate your thought process? Is by writing things down. So I'll define what writing is for me. Writing is a phenomena in which you're talking to your own self. So once you write things down, instead of focusing on a multiple thoughts, you'll only be focusing on that one thought which you're actually writing it down. Now, once you've articulated that, you will figure out the process. Oh, so out of all the thoughts in my head, I wrote one sentence. So I articulated probably 100, 200 words into a sentence. How did I do that? Is something for you to think on. Now, urge to troubleshoot at all times. So there are a lot of people, a lot of my younger cousins as well. Whenever you see a problem, right, any, be it a small problem, they have this urge that, why is that problem there? I need to solve it. So if you have that in you, again, that is really, really going to help you in this particular field as well. And urge to troubleshoot and attention to detail are very, very closely related, because if you have the attention to detail, you will be able to figure out the problems, you will be able to identify the problems, Now, once you've identified the problems, right, then there are two kinds of people here. People who just ignore the problem, they are okay with whatever, how things are going, they chill, how life is going. Then there are the latter, that if this is a problem, no matter what happens, I'm going to solve it, and no one's going to stop me from solving it. So that is something which is a really good skill to have. If you have it, I believe a lot of people identify problems, but they don't actually put in enough effort to actually solve that problem. So I would highly recommend for people to if you come across any problem, right then and there, try to figure out a solution. How it will help you? It'll help you to think faster. Because if I tell you that you have to solve the problem now, your neurons will just fire at a multiple at like a very very high speed, because now you have to solve that problem. Now, communicating to influence. So this is something that I read online, that 99% of the world's population today, they actually speak to communicate. But the top 1%, right, of leaders or people who are really really good, they don't just speak to communicate, they speak to influence. So whenever they say something, there are a lot of people who are listening to them, who are closely monitoring as to what they're actually saying. So if you can incorporate this habit in yourself, that whenever you're speaking, you make it a rule, make it a thumb rule, that I'm going to add value to all my conversations, and I will consciously communicate to influence, that's really going to help you. Now, if you're highly competitive, how do you recognize you're competitive? That if early on in your career, or your if you're in your teens, you really like any sport, a high intensity sport. What do I mean by a high intensity sport? Which, like a football, cricket, where you have to be extremely competitive. This also has, it plays a very very major psychological effect once you develop, or once you digress into sales. And if you have that, I think you should nurture that as well. Now, someone asked me that how do you handle rejection. So I think rejection is the staple diet for salespeople. So you have to be resilient, and if you're not resilient, you can actually build that particular resilience over a period of time. And you're a patient listener. Like if someone's talking, if someone's giving a monologue for 3 hours, if you have that patience in you, skills combined, if you're able to nurture them from now onwards, in the future you'll be a very very successful, or a really really good salesperson. Now, moving on to my next topic that I prepared for today is, today a lot of people, a lot of companies, a lot of salespeople, they are heavily involved in content creation. Most of the Once you get into content creation, because I'm also in 1 second, I think there is something on the chat. Awesome. I hope my voice, my video, everything is clear. I'll take a break. Awesome. Yes. Yeah. So now, in the world of content creation, right? Since I'm actively pursuing that, I am documenting my results, as well as I'm seeing some amount of success. Although I need to be more uh, involved into it with the number of posts that I'm putting out. But in terms of any sort of content creator, right? Content creation is nothing but you're selling something online, and what instead of asking for revenue, or instead of selling something, you're asking them to take a valuable action. Now, basically, if I had to put it into simpler terms, if I'm a content creator or if I'm a freelancer, just via my content, if I am putting anything out, the only way I can recognize that I've sold my content well, if you're sharing it, if there is enough engagement on it, or if there are enough people who are talking about it, if I'm able to target the right set of base emotions. Now, the questions that came to my head, and I spoke to a lot of people who were getting into content creation, were some of the few questions, few major ones that I've highlighted here. How do I plan my content? How do I map my content? What is my target audience? What is their call to action? Now, what is call to action? Could be a direct, like if you're selling a course, I want you to buy my course. If you're just posting content which is generic content, my call to action would be share, like, comment, and increase my follower base. What base emotion should I target? Depending on what uh, what industry or what space you're creating content in. Depends on that. I will be talking more about this. And what cohort should I target? So these are some of the few basic questions. And if you have more questions, please put it on the chat. Actually, I will be taking all these questions. And excuse me, I'm not well today, so my handkerchief will be will along with me playing a cameo role in this particular masterclass. Now, in terms of creating content, right, what I have done is I've scraped the internet and I've figured out two models which will definitely work for all sort of content creators. Now, what I want you to do is just take a second and take a screenshot of this particular slide if you can, and I'll tell you how do we actually use it. So most of y'all should definitely use it once and let me know over my Instagram or over any sort if that or if this works for you. Now, if you see, I call this empathy mapping content creation map. Now, if you see, uh, the reason why most of the content creators do really well is either they have a good content team along with them, or either there are 2 3 people who are always brainstorming. But when it comes to single content creators, right, like for me, I don't have anyone helping me with my content. I am creating, publishing, and designing all my content maps. So sometimes it gets really difficult to thought on a differential tangent. Similarly for y'all also, if there are not enough people who are asking the right questions, you will not know what are the right answers for those questions. So actually this empathy mapping will help your followers and sell your content online. So if you starting clockwise, whom are you empathizing with? This will decide your cohort. What do they need to do? As I said, they need to comment, like, share, whatever. What do they see? Now, in terms of content, what is your mode of content? What do they say about it? Like the moment you, let's say if I see a very cute dog video, I will say, oh, so cute. So what are these dialogues that you want them to say at that moment? What do? They talk about it, they share it, and they follow it, and they engage with you. These are certain actions that they want you to do. Now, what do they hear? In terms, what do I mean by what do they hear? In terms of what is the clear message that your content is sending out, and combining all these 6 questions, you will write whatever you think of in terms of what do they think and feel. Now, when I say what do they think and feel, in the pain section, right, you will write down, uh, let's say, is it thought provoking? What sort of stimulus am I actually creating via my content? And then once they've thought and felt about it, what should be the topic of your particular content? Or how do you decide which particular subtopic your content will be all about? Now, I know I've taken you through this in a very superficial way, and a lot of people would have understood what I'm trying to communicate. A lot of people might still not have gotten a clear idea. So, what I've done is I did a project with a mental wellness influencer or a mental wellness content creator. And we used the same exercise in which we were trying to figure out as to how we can actually help her design a very extensive content map. So this is the example now. Now that's how you actually use it, right? Now, whom are we empathizing with? Now with her, she only wanted to do Instagram audience first and then digress into multiple other social platforms. Now, what do they need to do? They need to obviously view, engage, share, and follow. What do they see is basically moods. Now, this is how you can decide, like, will I be a very post oriented stories, reels, IGTV videos, or I'll do live, whichever makes sense for that sub story, right? What do they say? Now, since it was mental wellness, she wanted them to say it was the content, whatever the video post, it was calming, stimulating, genuinely caring, engaging. These were the first set of adjectives we could think of. What do? They view, engage, share, and follow. And in terms of further increasing their engagement, we planned on doing trivias, sharing stories, and Q&As. What do they hear? A very calming effect to it, a very clear message. And post all these questions, once we brainstormed, these were the topics that we were able to figure out on which she wanted to create content. That was empowerment, stillness, inspiration, relatability, sympathy, gratefulness, in fact, self-improvement, vulnerabilities. And this is a very, very basic example. Now, in any field, you can use this empathy mapping. It's a very good structure for you to follow. And once you've gotten a hold, all the answers to all these questions that this particular diagram is asking, you will have the answers with you, and your followers will actually start understanding and believing and behaving in the way that you want them to, because you've already thought about their entire thought process. And rather than creating content and expecting the reaction, you've thought of the reactions and you're creating content. So we're working backwards to it. Now, this is for freelancers. This particular topic is if you're actually selling content. Could be courses, could be digital marketing services, could be anything. Now, if you're selling it online, now why it's very, very specific for freelancers? Because in terms of organizations, they have extensive sales teams. They have 3 to 4 people working under them, whose job is to go out and meet clients and close clients. But since you're working in silos, you're working alone, you're just an individual freelancer, it becomes extremely important for you to build that supply. Selling is the latter part. Unless and until you build that supply, how else will you sell it? So in terms of building supply, what you need to do is you have to create your content. And once you're creating content, how do we effectively sell it? Now, what I would want you to do is, again, if you want, take a screenshot of it quickly, take a screenshot. And first thing first, figure out all the modes that you want to target. Now, let's say, again, taking the similar example of the previous case study that I showed you, I've written out all the modes. Let's say reels, images, posts, live videos, your long videos, LinkedIn blogs, WhatsApp forwards. So whatever modes I could think of, right? I've put that down. Now, what I've done is I've created a table. It's not more of a table. It's like a X against Y graph, which is cohort against topic. Now, for the most simplistic reasons, or for the most basic ways, what I've done is I have given it two. I've actually divided the cohort into three aspects. That is less than 20, 20, 30, 30 years, so that we're targeting multiple age groups. And let's say if I'm selling in a particular industry, so this is the process that I would follow, right? If I was selling, like, let's say example, if I'm selling my own sales course. So what do I need to do is the various topics that I could think of. Awareness. What do I mean by awareness? That in terms of the overall industry, how do I make them aware of what's happening in the industry, which could be a little generic post. Now comes the education part, where I'm actually educating them as to how whatever I'm selling is going to help you. This is what education is. Now, then comes the selection part. Selection is nothing but, if I have a plethora of products that I'm selling, rather than giving them a menu, right? Uh, you would have felt that in a restaurant also. If you go to a new restaurant, they give you a menu, and rather than choosing right then, you go to the waiter and you ask them, what are the signature dishes here? What is the best dishes that you serve? That's what exactly what selection means. So you figure out your cohort, your target audience, and then you give them one or max two options, rather than giving them 7, 8 options. Because the more choices that you give them, the lesser the probability of them buying anything. If you give them one option, you'd be able to convince them more on that one option, rather than giving them 8 options and leaving them in a limbo. So then comes the onboarding part, that they are ready to trust you. So once you onboard them, onboarding doesn't mean that they've taken and they've finished the course. This is their first interaction with you. That means I'm onboarding you to my particular product, and that experience needs to be very, very crucial. They need to trust you for the journey which lies ahead, and they should feel satisfied that, if I've invested in something, my first experience was so great that in the future all my interactions would be better than the first experience. Then comes the impact. Now, a lot of people, what they do is, when they are actually demonstrating impact, they leave it to their end clients or their buyers. What do I mean by that? That if I've closed something, if I have a client, or if I've sold any digital marketing services, I will expect that, I will assume that it's already working. I'm doing my job, but your job is not just supplying the services, but also showing them how their business is helping. Impact could be by sharing relevant reports, by sharing relevant testimonials as to how their business has actually boosted because of your particular product. Then comes the growth part. Growth part generally follows onboarding and impact, because once you've onboarded them and you've proved them that my product has had a significant impact in your business, now you're ready to take on one more another product, or invest more in certain services that's going to grow their account within your business. Now these are the definitions of the topics. Now against every individual box, right? What I would want you to do is, in terms of less than 20 years, if you're making someone aware, what is the best mode that you could think of? Could be a reel, could be just a post. Now similarly, if I'm talking about greater than 30 years, they might not be active on Instagram, so I would rather choose a LinkedIn. So if you fill in each and every box, you will have a clear direction in terms of your target audience, how to target them, where to put your efforts, and how to get maximum results by putting your efforts in. So I hope you've taken a screenshot of this as well. This will really help you in terms of selling anything online, starting from digital marketing services, or selling your own content, or maybe selling your own brand for that matter. Now I'm going to talk about the top skills. Now if I'll take a break here. Earlier I spoke about this. Go early signs to nurture. Now you will see a correlation. Now, early signs to nurture, what did I signify is very early on in your career, how do you identify that these signs could eventually become top skills? This is the process that you need to do. You figure out what are the early signs, you figure out top skills. Now the process, right? You are the process. Now if you religiously follow the process, build a process, figure out what works for you, from you nurturing your early signs, eventually leading them for you to possessing these top skills. Now I will talk about all these skills in a very brief, I would say brief way, because although these skills are extensively can be extensively spoken about, but I will be talking about them in a very probably a paragraph or a couple of sentences, and then we will move on to the Q&A part of it. So active listening, what do I mean by active listening? So again, there are two kinds of people that I have come across. One who listen to speak. What do I mean by that? That if it's a group conversation going on, they're desperately waiting for their turn, that as soon as the turn comes, they will vomit whatever they're thinking in their heads. And it might make sense or it might not make sense. So that's not active listening. That is passive listening. You're listening, but you're not reflecting of what you've listened. Then there are people who actually listen to respond, not just listen to speak, listen to respond. So once you've heard, once you've understood the context of the conversation that is happening, you will reply or you will respond with something that adds value to the entire conversation. That's what active listening is all about. Now, again, everything that seeps that succeeds one skill after another, it's actually very closely interconnected. So if I talk about ability to ask right questions at the right time, now there are questions which do not fit all circumstances or all scenarios. That's why I've clearly mentioned at the right time, because if uh, if you've just closed a very simple example, if you've just closed a good deal with a good client, a digital marketing service, they're spending close to about, let's say, 50,000 with you, and they're really happy with you. Now I have seen a lot of people, a lot of salespeople get greedy. Now they've paid 50,000, they know that my prospect has money, they will ask for that money right away. That I know you've taken this product, how about you take this and this as well? Now, this is a very subjective scenario. What it shows or what it signifies is that you could have asked this question after demonstrating the impact and the growth aspect, but you asked it right away. You might lose trust because the buyer or the prospect might think that this guy is now taking me for a ride. After every conversation, he's asking for more money. Should I trust him or not? So that's what ability to to ask the right questions at the right time comes into the picture. Now, articulate communicator. So very I really like this thought of mine, which I learned through my mentors, that always focus on the depth of the conversation rather than the length of the conversation. What do I mean by that? You would have met a lot of salespeople. They will call you, and for 2 3 minutes they will just tell you about their life story, what they're selling, what it will do for you. That is adding length to the conversation. How do I add depth to the conversation? By asking questions, a, by asking why questions, as to why do you think it makes sense for you, what do you think about it, how do you think it can make an impact in your life. So once you keep scratching the surface, once you keep exploring the depths of any conversations, right, what you will do is, with every layer that you go deeper, you will actually instill more stimulus. All your conversations will become more stimulating rather than boring, and that's the ideal state to be for any salesperson. Now, storytelling, I think everyone talks about storytelling, but how storytelling works, I've not heard a lot of people talk about how storytelling works. So there is a concept called, it's a psychological concept. It's called neural coupling. You can definitely Google it, and it's very, very closely related to storytelling. Now, how neural coupling works is, if you're having a regular conversation with someone, your neurons are firing in different directions, which means that you're thinking in a different tangent, they're thinking in a different tangent, and somewhere in the middle, while you're having that conversation, your neurons are actually having a similar pattern. But what happens with neural coupling is, while you're actually telling a story, right, the storyteller is so captivating that everyone who's listening to the story, right, all the neurons are functioning in the exact same direction. They're firing in the same direction. That's why we use, there's a very common term that we use, that it was such a captivating speech. It was such a captivating pitch. What do they mean by that? Is, during the entire pitch or during the entire speech, for 5 10 minutes, they held your neurons in captivity. You couldn't think of anything else, and you were just feeling, you were just understanding what these guys were telling. And that is the biggest advantage of storytelling, that you can actually hypnotize a person with your story. So if you have this skill, how do you nurture that skill, how do you become good at it, is something that I will talk about, but not now. But that is something for you to think upon. Definitely Google this term called neural coupling. Now, having an objective approach. So something that has worked really for me, if you can negate the subjectivity from your life, anything subjective does not lead you to a particular thing. So if you can objectify the subjectivity, any sort of subjectivity, then I think that's a very, very good skill for you to have, and it's very closely related with the kind of data sets that you have, how you denote data, how do you take feedback. And that brings me to my next skill, receptive to feedback. So what I would suggest, anyone who's giving you feedback, right, believe in a concept called as identity less feedback. That let's say, if your friend is telling you something, and that's a relevant feedback, take the feedback but not take the identity. What do I mean by that? Try to understand what the feedback is telling you without thinking what your friend is telling you. Because if you start thinking what your friend is telling you, you might be clouded with multiple emotions, like maybe he's not happy with me, maybe he's jealous, or what's his problem, why is he telling me this. That's what identity does. Similarly, if you remove the identity and you just listen to the feedback, then you will actually think, or you will actually be able to ponder on, okay, if he's telling me this, maybe I need to improve on this aspect of my life. And that's what he was trying to do that. So that's what identity less feedback means. So if you have that skill, because I'm pretty sure in the age group that you have, a lot of people are telling you a lot of things. Some of it makes sense, some of it is absolute garbage. So how do you actually figure out what feedback works for you? Is by removing the identity. So healthy competitiveness, I've already spoken about this. If you have that edge of always being the best, or proving that you can be the best, that is a great skill to have. uh, Again, I've spoken about high tolerance towards rejections. So uh, embrace your rejections, don't get demotivated by your rejections. As I said, each and every rejection comes with a unique data set. If you're able to realize that pattern as to why you're being rejected, it becomes a blessing in disguise, and a very, very religious habit of documentation. I think these are the top skills that I've had. That's how I've gained success. A lot of people, a lot of my mentees whom I've trained across the last 4 5 years, I have tried to instill, not just instill, drill these habits into them, so that when they go on to lead teams or lead organizations, at least they can transfer or they can pass on this knowledge, which definitely helps. Now this is the announcement that I had to make. Now all of these things plus more, what I've done is I have condensed my 7 years of experience into a 10-week long sales pro league in association with Avalon Meta. It's a very carefully curated course structure for I think all kinds of people, freelancers, industries, people who are trying to be in sales, people who are trying to improve their sales qualities, people who are actually thinking that yes, sales is something that is definitely for me, or even if you're planning to start your own business, because a sales people are a direct representation of the business and the company. They are the link that connects your business to your company. So if the sales is not getting revenue, you're not able to show revenue. If you're a funded startup, you won't be able to raise more fundings, and eventually you'll have to shut your company. So sales plays a a pivotal role in shaping any individual, any organization, any industry. So I've covered each and every aspect of it, including in that sales pro league. I'll be having two group projects, so it'll be a group based learning project as well. So where you will actually feel the stigma, feel the energy of how salespeople work in tandem, in teams, in small teams. So we'll have two very interesting group projects. This is something from my end. There will be a full scholarship given to the best graduate. There are some guest lectures from top folks in this industry, and all the sessions, none of the sessions would be recorded. It will be live. It will be interactive sessions. I will be I'll be speaking to each and every individual one on one, giving them feedback, improving them on things, helping them prepare for interviews. So a lot of things is what I'm covering in this 10-week long Power Pact Sales Pro League. And you will hear more about this in on my Instagram, on the Avalon Meta Instagram, on the Avalon Meta Discord server. So this is one major announcement that I wanted to tell all of y'all. Now probably is the most fun time. I would be taking live questions, the most relevant ones. So let me just quickly go back to Zoom. Yep, where is my Zoom? Yep, it's here. Wait, how do I actually go to? I hit that chart. Now I'm confused as to how do I actually go to the chat option. Can someone write something so that I get a notification? Where did my Zoom go? Yep, got it. Yes, awesome. Perfect. Now I will take some live questions. Let me go back to the ones where I left off. Yep. Yes, we can. Good evening. I hope you enjoyed the session. I hope you gained something knowledgeable out of it. For the screenshots that you've taken, definitely if you're sharing it on your Instagram, if you learned anything on your Instagram, do tag me. My Instagram name is I like to Mohit. And everything's perfect. I have a question. I think no, this is what we had started. Kavish was the last question I took. I am planning. Just excuse me till I figure out where was the last question. Yup. I want to collaborate with gyms. I'm a nutritionist, and still they use very old pros signs to transform themselves, but even they don't. So how do I go about it? So in terms of gyms, right now, a lot of gyms are actually running on very low capacity because the online working out scheme has actually done wonders because people like to work at homes. So if you can actually decipher something for them which could help them increase their reach online. So whenever you're selling something, right, it has to be a very symbiotic relationship. You do something for them, you give them value, and for that value, they will give you a pedestal, they will give you some a platform where they will listen to you. So if you do something nice for them, I'm pretty sure they'll be able to probably listen to what you're selling. If you're a nutritionist, do like a free meal plan for a few of the top members and get testimonials, get feedback, and then pitch that testimonial and feedback and tell them ki, uh, these are your clients who are actually liking my product, so let's do a collaboration. And that's how you collaborate. While today is online sales, how relevant to offline sales method? So offline sales is nothing beats offline sales. During this COVID, a lot of people had they had to move to the online way, but then sales still is predominantly offline because if I'm talking about B2C, then it makes sense because the the target ticket size is very small. But in terms of bigger deals, most of the top businessmen or people actually believe in sitting across the table, seeing, feeling your personality, what you bring to the table, and then make that decision that yes, this is the right person that I want to invest in. So I think I don't see offline sales becoming redundant anytime soon or even in the future, no matter how much automation we can bring. Because the more automation we bring, there are some people who get, I think, uh, they're scared by the automation, and then the more automation comes, the more they want to trust humans. So I think offline sales will always be right there. Like I owe my career to offline sales, so definitely yes. Is this going to help me if I'm starting on FMCG product? I think so, it should. How do I generate leads? B2C target audiences 20 to 25 year olds. Figure out where do 20 to 25 year olds hang out. So right now they hang out on these platforms, Instagram. So I spoke about the content map that you can create. If you can have a clear call to action, probably a form, someone suggested a form, or any sort of email ID which you can denote, you have your lead set. I am selected in ICICI Security for sales of mutual funds, insurance. How should I prepare for it? Selected, I'm hoping that you're starting your job here. So again, the basic principles of sales, it's a very subjective answer. So I don't like giving subjective answers right now, but something that I would advise you on, that have a process like the process that I told you, right? Make people aware, then educate them as to how these mutual funds will help, then choose them for them, make a choice for them. Because in terms of mutual funds, a lot of people just don't know what mutual funds to invest in because they don't want to do that extra effort of researching. So if you do that research for them, I'm pretty sure they'll appreciate your effort, and then suggest that for the first year, for the second year, you should definitely invest in these mutual funds, and give them a very solid reason, and prepare testimonials from top clients that these guys invested in these mutual funds past 2 years, past 3 years, and this is the sort of return that they have received. I think that should technically work for you. I did sales in Tata Sky and Tata Motors for 2 years. Can I consider this as an experience and try for B2B sales? So any sales is sales experience. Now, once you actually land an interview, right? No one's gonna ask you that uh, why Tata Sky, why Tata Motors. They will ask you questions as to why you will be a fit in their company. And once you have a clear question, a clear directive as to what sort of sales you did and how your sales experience, or how articulately you probably create a story of your experience, you can try for any sales job. Where are these questions coming from? Don't know. I don't understand the context of this question. How can one practice sales? Can one start freelancing in sales? Yes, you can start freelancing in sales, but then most sales job which are there for freelancers. It's a commission based job. So you will be working a lot and you will be making certain commissions. So I would rather suggest join a sales institution, give interviews, and do sales where at least you're getting your salary for all your efforts. And on top of that, you're getting incentivized for whatever you're selling. I think so. This session will be recorded, and we will upload this later, even on my YouTube as well as on Avalon's YouTube. I want to collaborate. I think I took that. I took that. I'm planning to sell my video over a video call. Is it a good idea? I have my family business. We sell. Yes, definitely. So today's session was all about creating content. So now I think the session itself would have answered a correct method to approach a client being a fresh freelancer so that they can take my service without any prior experience. Uh, Correct method. I think since you're starting out, all the methods that you would try, I think I spoke about multiple methods. Figure out different methods, uh, build a matrix that method one, number of tries, success. Method two, number of tries, number of clients reached, success. Figure out which is the best success rate that you can achieve, and then you probably allocate your effort there. I run a B2B, how to approach or convince foreign business for export import. It takes multiple layers when you're talking about export import. Also read about what the export import laws, create content, and then if you're creating content, I would also suggest you to advertise or promote your content in the cohort that you're running, because uh, I come across a lot of ads on Instagram, and some of the ads are actually good, and I've actually bought products from those ads. So if you're, since it's a herbal B2B product, I'm not sure what product it is, but if it's solving a relevant problem, run an ad showing that what problem you're solving. I think a lot of people will be able to relate to it. How to react if people are rude in cold call? uh, by actually showing genuine care. Like rudeness uh, cannot be tackled by being rude or being astute. I'll give you a very simple, a very I'll give you an example for a cold call, which surprisingly I got success in. So one of my clients, I had called him for a meeting in the morning, like 11, 12, and I said, "Hello, Mr. X. We spoke last week and you had asked me to call today. I was just hoping," and I was about to complete my sentence. And his response was, "Listen, buddy, I am on my way to the hospital. Can you please call me later?" And since he said hospital, now a lot of people would have said, "Okay, I will call you later." A few would have gone an extra mile saying that, "Okay, if not now, can I call you tomorrow?" They could have at least gotten a time out of it. Now, what I did was I forgot about my pitch, and he was extremely rude. And my immediate response was, "Oh my God, are you fine? I hope everything's fine." And when I said that, I think he was taken aback. He said that, "Yes, yes, everything's fine. I'm actually on my way to see my wife. She's due, and that's why I'm in a hurry." And as soon as he said that his wife is pregnant, my first reaction was, "Oh my God, that's amazing news. That's a huge news for the family. I would like to extend my congratulations. Forget about the sales. I will reach out to you later." And I said I will reach out to you later, rather than he telling me reach out to me later. And as a response to it, he was genuinely and surprisingly nice to me. And he said, "Let's do one thing, call me tomorrow morning and we will speak." And that's how the conversation went. So rudeness cannot be tackled by rudeness. It can be tackled by showing genuine care. So that is something that has worked for me, should work for you. What is the site? Kaggle, Kaggle.com. If you're an introvert, should you? Definitely. So sales is the most inclusive profession. Why it's an inclusive profession? Because if you're an introvert, right, you don't like speaking a lot, but you like listening a lot. That's what introverts do. So you can actually use that skill to your advantage. If you're an extrovert, now the extroverts, they always run the risk of ignoring some points because they're so eager to get their points across, because they're an extrovert, right? They used to be popular, sharing their point across, always having an opinion, that sometimes they overlook or ignore what the other person is actually trying to communicate. So it's a double-edged sword. If you're an introvert, you have certain advantages which you can apply in sales. If you're an extrovert, you have certain disadvantages that you should uh, definitely try to iron out or crease out if you're in sales. uh this is being recorded. Yes, yes, yes. Summarize the beginning. It'll be recorded, so you don't have to worry about that. Now I'll move on towards the end and I'll go up. I did sales cars. Can I get nervous while speaking to people and not able to structure my thoughts properly. Vipul, start writing. If you start writing, you'll automatically gain confidence in terms of articulating. I told you the reason because once you write down things, right, you're able to filter through multiple thoughts and just think about one thought. So if you can write well, you will automatically see that seeping into your normal conversations, and you will not, it won't happen overnight, but gradually you will see that you will figure out a process how you will be able to structure your thoughts properly. Could you explain the objective approach with example? Yes, definitely. Now I will give you an example. Let's say if I'm speaking to a client, and there is a concept called as logical fallacy. Now, logical fallacy is nothing but me sharing data that impresses the client, but there is no way in terms of them figuring out if I'm right or wrong. Now, the example would be if I'm in, let's say, I'm selling medical equipments, I'm selling masks since it's COVID time. Now, in a city where I will tell them that in your city, it's a compulsion to wear masks, but 90% of the people are not wearing masks. Now, there is no way for the client to figure out that if 90% of the people are actually wearing masks or not. But he or she would have a genuine understanding कि हाँ, मेरी शहर में or in my city no one's wearing a mask. So that becomes a logical fallacy, and it becomes an objective approach. Now, rather than me saying that, right, most of the people are not wearing masks, rather than saying most, I will say, right, 80% of the people are not wearing masks. And for that 80%, you need to have masks, because I know for a fact in the future, 3-4 months, you will have a huge bump in your sales just for these masks. Now, that's how I'm converting the subjectivity into objectivity through a concept called logical fallacy. I am a freelancer. I want to capture the US and European clients. So how can I do that? Please answer. So before you capture the data. That's what all big companies do. Before they actually capture the client, they capture the data. So the answer is, how do you actually capture the data? By building content for those particular geographies, by following a lot of people, by doing collaborations with those set of freelancers who are working in that particular geography, or you spend your money or you promote in that geography. So once you build a clear data set, then you start applying your methods. Then you have leads, right? Then you take those leads and start converting them one by one and figure out what's working for you and what's not working for you. Do you think Indian accent is a barrier while doing sales overseas? No, I've done sales in Dubai, I've done sales in Philippines. It's not actually any sort of barrier. Because even when you're speaking to them, everyone has an accent. People in Dubai have an accent, people in Philippines have an accent. So if you're conscious about it, you're just doing a mistake for your own self, because believe me, they are also as conscious about their accent as you are about yours. Oh, I am own startup. I'm making video content related to stock market. For that, I have to approach digital broker and cryptocurrency like Upstock, Zerodha, CoinSwitch. How should I approach them? So you shouldn't approach like companies directly like CoinSwitch and Zerodha. You should start with smaller companies. Like there is Coindex, there is Wazirex, there is OKEX. And these are relatively smaller companies in crypto. Then Zerodha also is a huge. It's one of its kind. So you make your way from smaller companies. You figure out a case study as to how it worked for them. You take the testimonials and then you target the big fish. Because if you're a small fish in the pond and you directly go for the bigger fish, you will get eaten up. So figure out what are the other smaller fishes, convince them, and that the group itself will help you convince the bigger fish. What books do you recommend for sales which are action based? Now, most of the books, right? Just figure out when was it published the first time, because most of the current books, they are just editions or different editions of ones that are printed long back. So I follow a lot of content online. I read a lot of articles on sales. I don't read a lot of books on sales. I read books which are very uh, uh, non-functional but non-sales. Like I try to relate psychology and philosophy with sales, and that's what's really worked for me. What is the deadline to register for your pro league? You will have more information about this probably a month from now. I have one more. I'm making okay. Because can I get recording? Yes, it will be recorded. Now everything goes out of context for me. If I join the course on Meta, Varun said, don't go for popular content creation path, choose different one. Your comments. So obviously you have to figure out what your unique selling point is, and what would work for your cohort. So not there is not one particular cloth that fits all. So you will have to tailor your content to different sorts of audiences, and you will figure out what works for you or what does not work for you, because there are a lot of conventional content creators, but there are a lot of unconventional content creators, and in both spheres they've achieved success, and they've also received immense amount of failures, right? So until and unless you try both the ways, you can try unconventional ways, you can try conventional ways, and figure out what works for you. But in most cases, unconventional ways work more than the conventional ways. Every Going to the last few questions. It wasn't amazing. It's so hard for me to speak to others, Eric. Uh, it's okay. It's not a flaw. It's something that you can improve over period. So I'll share how I over probably got over that fear of speaking to a larger group is by recording my voice, or by facing the camera, or by facing a mirror. So once you're facing your own self, right, you don't have that stage fright, or you don't have that any sort of discomfort that people are looking at you. First, you need to get comfortable with your own consciousness. As long as you're comfortable with your own consciousness, you will reach a stage where others actually don't matter. You will be able to uh, just make your way through all the noise. And even if I put like a crowd of 100, 200 in the future for you, since you're so comfortable with your own self, you'll be able to speak in front of others. Uh, Sell me this pro league. I've already made like a pitch video for this pro league. You will start seeing ads, and you will see how I'm able to sell this pro league to you. But if you want to sell anything, you should definitely join this pro league. I mean, it's my experience of 7 years that I'm condensing. And if you think I'm credible enough, then you should definitely look at the pitch video, make the decision for your own self. I'm not going to sell you anything. You have to make that decision for your own self. Interview tips for sales jobs. A lot of interview tips, but the most crucial would be when you're talking about your projects, right? What you've done. A lot of people, what they do is, once they're demonstrating that this is a project that I've done, they only talk about their achievements. Like, I'll give you a very simple example. Like, let's say I've done a project where I went on and I launched an international market, let's say Philippines. If I start right away that, oh, I went there, closed 500, set up the entire Philippines, this, that, it wouldn't give an exact picture of what I bring to the table. So in terms of the graph, right, tell them an extremely stressful story. Like, what are the problems that you faced? And then what are the actions that you took? The STAR method. I think I spoke about the STAR method in one of my ways. You describe the situation. What does STAR stand for? You describe the situation. You describe what were the tasks in hand. You describe what are the actions that you took. And then you describe what the response was that for those particular uh, actions that you took. So if you follow a STAR method in your interviews, you tell them that once you took any project, these were the problems which were existing in that particular market. These were the tasks in hand. These were the actions that I took, and this was the response. Because more than your project, they actually appreciate how your approach was towards that particular problem, and what are the action or the set of actions that you took in terms of solving that problem. Where to find leads depends on what leads you're finding. How to distribute CTA over content for a service-based business on every content piece. How to distribute call to action over content for a service-based business on every content piece. Actually, you can't really do CTAs on Instagram unless and until it's an ad. So if you're promoting something, then you can have a relevant call to action. But on other platforms like Facebook, on LinkedIn, you can attach your forms. You can attach any sort of lead them to an article where they can leave their email ID, or they can just leave their email ID. And once you have any sort of data or their phone number, then you can start retargeting those set of clients. And every content piece, make sure that the data that you're collecting is actually relevant to the content that you're displaying. Not meeting targets can set a bad impression. What that doesn't mean you're inefficient. If you're unable to close a sale, one of the reasons can be that the offering is not good enough. How do you justify your performance in that case? So if two things, right? In any performance measuring thing, there are two things. One is leading metrics, one is lagging metrics. Leading metrics is something that tells how good you are, how many closures you've done, how many clients you've gotten on board, what is the total revenue that you're responsible for. This will actually tell that, okay, this person is a huge asset to my company, and bring me good amount of values. This is for people who are actually meeting targets or barely missing targets. Now, once you're not meeting targets, what will actually set a bad impression is your lagging metrics. Lagging metrics would be a, how many people did you touch base, how many cold calls did you do, how many meetings did you score, and out of those meetings, how many closures you did. So a, let's say if I've touched on 100 clients, out of that I was able to get the contact details for like 80. So in terms of just cold calling them, that's a 80% conversion. Out of those 80, I have scored a meeting from 20 people. That is 25% conversion. And out of those 20, I have closed, let's say 10. That's a 50% conversion from a call, from a meeting to a closure ratio. Now, since I have the entire process in my hand, I can work backwards. Now, if my target is 10 closures, I know for a fact that I need to do uh, the factor that is probably 80 into double, that is 160 calls. I need to do 40 meetings, and then you can't go wrong, right? Because these are your own data points. These are your own data points that you've prepared over a period of time by documenting your efforts. And these are what lagging metrics stand for. So probably once your manager talks about it, they will not talk about your targets or how you missed that. You will actually tell them that I'm meeting the right set of people, but still I'm not able to close. If everything is right and still things are not happening for you, that means that then you need to work on your pitch. You need to evaluate what are the aspects of your pitch that you need to improve on, and then take a very objective approach towards improving your entire process. So don't just focus on the pitch, focus on the entire process. That's my one piece of advice for you. Talking about benefits of writing, is it the same with typing as you're writing anyway? But no, yeah, it's the same. By writing, I meant just focusing on one thought over others. How do you prioritize those thoughts? How should we make documentation for rejection? Uh, Figure out as to why they rejected, and keep asking these questions, why. Like one of the reasons could be, I don't have the budget, or this is not the right time, or they will give some subjective reasons. So until and unless you're satisfied with the reason you're getting, do not take rejection A. But still, if you get a rejection, denote how long did it take for them to reject you, what was the time gap, then denote what was the exact reason, then denote that for how long were they interested in the process. Like let's say if I'm pitching, they were really interested till the end of the pitch, but as soon as I mentioned the price, I could see that hesitancy coming in. So maybe price is the issue. Now if price is the issue, maybe they're not able to see enough value. If they're not able to see enough value, how do I show them enough value? So make a chart of this. put in data, and then you will be able to document your rejections. For each rejection, at least have 3 to 4 points. One would be the reason. What is the exact reason that they said? Note down that reason. Then figure out that have they invested in a competition, because that also could be a reason. Because if they've already subscribed to a competition, or if they have the budget and then they're telling you that, that means that your pitch wasn't able to show them enough value. Then figure out the pricing aspect of it. And if you have more data points, this will be very subjective to the industry that you belong to. If you have more data points, that's how you can actually document your rejections. Yeah, who knows nothing in tech? How can he start in sales? I think I was a techie, Pratap, and you can start in sales by following the principles of sales. I think one of the key discussion points of this particular webinar was as to how I evoluted from that. How things work in tech companies. I mean, knowledge is there, but uh, people fall in love with their desks, people fall in love with their systems. But for me, I couldn't fall in love with my desk. I wanted to meet more people. I was always very influential in terms of what I wanted to convey across, and I wanted to be much closer to the business. So in tech companies, you're working on projects, you're working on consultations, you're working with bigger firms, but you're really far from the business. In sales, you are the one which is connecting the business to the company. So I always wanted to be the face of a company. I always wanted to be much closer to the business, and that's how I digressed from tech to sales. uh, Now I'm going to skip a few questions. You can just search, Mayank, you can just search by my name, Mohit Ahuja. That's my full name. I'm not really active on YouTube, although I'm really active on Instagram. Any free tools for sales and things we can do to speed up the loop? I mean, there are multiple CRMs, but for freelancers, Excel itself, like I think people underestimate the power of Excel. And I really like this page on Instagram. It's called Miss Excel. She does some really engaging and interesting posts as to how you can learn Excel. If you're able to grasp what Excel can probably give you and apply your documenting skills onto about sales on Excel, I think that itself is a very, very good tool. But now in the future, if you're planning to have a much bigger team, a proper sales organization, then you can look at different sales CRMs, and obviously those are paid. Sir, how did you get into sales? I want to know your story. It's a very long story. Probably I'll do a post about it. How to talk confidently to someone who intimidates you. Understand why would they want to intimidate you, because not everyone wants to intimidate anyone for no reason at all, right? So figure out what their pain point is, and here's where constructive small talk comes into the picture. Don't just small talk for hello, how are you, how are things. Ask them about something that will give you a very meaningful answer, like what do you intend on doing with your ambitions, what are you doing currently, what are the current problems that you face. And if that guy is trying to intimidate you and in return you can solve a problem for him or her, I think that will help you develop a really, really good rapport with them. Because from then onwards they'll think that yes, there was this girl Shweta who came to me and without even selling me anything or asking for anything, she solved a problem for me. So once you develop that rapport, that intimidation part will automatically vanish. Is sales only prone to products? No, service, products, everything. What approach and even lifestyle? What approach or skills is required for getting a sale in services in a gig economy? What is, I mean, multiple skills. I will talk about all those skills in a lot of detail, in very, very detailed format. I have a very scientific approach towards most of the things that I talk about, but I'll be covering that in my sales pro league. Do you think Instagram advertising these days are scammy and we need our advertising to be modified? Avail Since the entire advertising platform of Instagram lies in your hands, you can control your cohort, you can control what posts go out. So as long as you have full control over something, it cannot be scammy. They're also giving you relevant insights as to how much what sort of content, sorry, what sort of responses you're getting. So if you make something clickbaity, then definitely people who are smart will not fall for it, but people who are very gullible, they will be your scam targets. But you will figure that out by the ads that you see, because obviously there are multiple people who are trying to scam you, and Instagram doesn't have a clear algorithm to figure out what companies are scamming, because it's their advertising platform is so open, so democratic. So I think the content that you're putting out, once people land onto your page, the sort of brand that you're representing, that itself will help people decide if you're scammy or not. But yes, I think every month, every year, I think Instagram, Facebook, their ad sales, their ad systems are evolving at a rate that we have no idea about. So probably if you know someone at Facebook or someone at Instagram, connect with them and understand as to how their ad models work. It's extremely critical. Facebook uses this tool called Facebook Pixel, which lets you target a very, very specific and detailed cohort, which I think none of the advertising platforms help you. So a lot to learn there. Suggest books or blogs that help you grow in sales. Actually, all the blogs. So figure out companies. So my way is kind of very obscure in these things. I don't read books. I don't unnecessarily read blogs. What I do is I figure out companies, then I figure out founders, then I listen to the founders. If they make sense, then I read their blogs. Because all of us want to follow the feet of someone who's already achieved success. And for founders, right, they will share first hand information of the struggles that they faced, rather than someone who's writing a book. Because someone who writes a book, right, in my opinion, they have collated data from multiple sources and then they're putting it onto one book. But for someone, what ideally I would do is I would collate that data for my own self. For a fintech company, I would follow the founder Nikhil Kamath, Nitin Kamath from Zerodha. I will read their blog and I will figure out what are the first-hand problems that they face, and try to connect that as to how I can replicate their efforts and make my processes a little better. How to be confident when you're approaching a client for the first time? Uh, by researching. So if you've researched enough, right? So once you meet the client for the first time, so a salesperson goes through multiple professions. While researching, you're a detective. So stalk them, figure out what they like, what they don't like, where they were last month using the social handles, and try to connect dots. Which, if you present that dot, they will automatically fall into that trap. Now, when you approach a client, don't approach the client as a salesperson. Always have a very consultative approach, like a salesy approach. Like you will have a very forced small talk, and then you will start pitching, which is not appreciated now, because people have gotten really, really smart, and there are multiple people selling multiple things to multiple people at all times. So in this case, what I would suggest is a consultative approach, where you talk about the multiple topics that I spoke to you about, right? You make them aware of how the industry is, that's how you develop credibility. You then talk about educating them. You then talk about helping them with what's actually going to make sense to them. Now, during these three steps, three particular steps, right, you're actually helping them figure out how to run their business for future transactions or for future, and then they will automatically start trusting you. Once you start seeing them trusting you, you won't have to feel confident, you'll automatically be confident. So that is something that has worked for me. With all Will all assignments be team based? Yes, but I get I love Ankur, I like him, but I get backstabbed because I will be competing him, and how good he is makes me uneasy. I mean, that's a double-edged sword again. If it shouldn't make you uneasy, it should make you want to figure out how big the gap is. So for me, like, if I put myself in your shoes, right? I'm here, Ankur is here. Okay. So now I can objectively figure out what is that gap. Now my next task would be, how do I bridge that gap? Now, how do I bridge that gap is by actually studying what he has done throughout the career throughout his career, what he's doing now, what I am doing with my career, how can I not follow that path, but figure out something that has worked for him and try to incorporate that into my processes. So don't feel uneasy. In fact, learn and figure out how far you are from a person like Ankur Warikoo, and what will it take for you to bridge that gap. Once you've bridged that gap, then comes the next step. Benefits. Okay, thanks for the insightful content. You're very, oh, thank you so much. What is the correct answer of sell me this pen, Vishwas? So, the correct answer for sell me this pen, in my opinion, would be I think Jordan Belfort also did a video on this, and I could relate to it. I won't sell a pen to anyone because, as I told you, right, I believe in conversion rates. Now, if I'm wasting most of my time selling a pen to someone who doesn't need a pen, that means that my time is not getting the desired value it should. So I would figure out by questions that when was the last time you purchased a pen? What was the style of the pen that you actually purchased? Why do you use a pen? Do you use a pen to sign contracts, or do you use a pen to write just journals, or do you use a pen to write notes? Because if you're using your pen to sign contracts, I will sell you the most expensive pen because it holds some superstitious value. It holds dignified value because you're signing deals. And throughout the process of these set of questions, right, I will actually get to know what is the correct way to sell a pen and whom to sell a pen. Because if I sit here, waste 2 hours 3 hours of my life selling a pen to someone who's not purchased a pen for the last 10 years of his or her life, I won't be doing justice to my sales skills. Someone missed the pro league session, will they get the recorded lectures later? No, it's a pro league, it's going to be paid, so it's not going to be recorded, and the entire fun is interacting live with me one-on-one, where I figure out what your shortcomings are, how you can improve that, how you can further make progress in your career by incorporating the things that I talk about in the pro league. Can we have a mock pitch? I think we need 2 people for it. I will do a Discord session on mock pitches soon. I used to do it quite often early on, but it wouldn't make sense right now. So let me plan a Discord session for you all soon where we'll do live mock pitches. How did I get into sales? I'd like to know your story. Uh, I was really frustrated with my job in Accenture because I think I realized that people who were not smarter than me, I shouldn't say that because I consider everyone equally smart. But then in terms of how they would get their work done, in terms of their efficiency, they were getting like 3x, 4x of what I was getting paid. People weren't motivated. People always wanted to be on breaks. Uh, After working for 1 hour, they needed a smoke break, they needed a chai break, and that kind of thing wasn't flying with me. I really wanted to work. So just that lack of hustle, lack of motivation, it just compelled me to quit Accenture. And then I applied for 3 startups, 4 startups, in fact, for different roles: a content head, content creator, content writer, as a account manager, and as a sales manager in Zomato. Of all the brands, I got out of 4, I got through 3 of those interviews, so I had the choice. And at that point, Zomato was a brand which was very close to my heart because I used to use that app quite often. I was very comfortable with the F&B industry because in my family also a lot of my chacha, my dad has been closely associated with restaurants. So I think I had that in myself that I'll do well in F&B. But I always had that doubt: will I do well in sales or not? But then that's how I got into sales, to prove myself that I can do sales as well. How to sell yourself? Dep- I mean, how to sell yourself? I won't sell myself unless and until I need to. So selling yourself is that trust me approach, which I don't believe in. So you sell your mind, you sell facts, you sell data points, and you sell a problem. So I think Varun also mentioned this in one of his talks, and that resonated very, very highly with me. that if you're selling fishing rods, right? Don't pitch fishing rods. Sell the person or teach that person how to fish. Because if you've taught that person how to fish, if you've solved that problem, he will need that product. So selling yourself is a very uh, generic as well as very crude term, because you don't you're selling a piece of yourself, which is your mind, and they need to resonate with your mind. And you need to establish the fact that on this table, when I'm sitting across my prospect or my client, you might have knowledge about your business, but I have more knowledge about this industry, because I've spoken to multiple people in this industry. And that's why I'm sitting here pitching you something that's going to help you in the future. What are the skills required for a top marketer? I will. I'm not a marketer, to be honest. So I think there is a huge, in terms of skills. I think more or less there will be some sales skills which you can apply, but then the more research that you do, I wouldn't be the right person to answer that question. Every startup is about bringing everything online. Should one think very differently or focus on what can bring one thing online in its best phase? The reason why people are doing that is because a lot of people are spending a lot of time. So this is one experiment for you. Pre-COVID, right? If you just remember the amount of time you used to spend on Instagram and Facebook combined, it would be, for an average person, like I've actually read it online, for an average person it was 1 2 hours. Post that, people are spending 2 to 2.5 hours online. Now if most of the population, if most of the crowd is lying online, and they have enough time to actually go through the content that you're selling, you have a great chance, you have a very, very high chance of actually converting your target audience and selling them something. I'm going to start skipping questions because we've kind of overshot the time that I had dedicated for this webinar. Best people to follow on social media: for me, follow me, please. Thank you. And there's more. You follow me, I'll tell you. Please share Miss Excel page. There are a lot of them. Just DM me. I'll share her profile. LinkedIn ID. My name is Mohit Ahuja Samya. You can actually. I should be one of the top results, because I've tried that. I've tried searching for myself on LinkedIn. I was one of the top results. Hopefully, you should find me. What softwares are we going to learn sales? Renuka, depends on different companies. Like generally, people use CRM, Salesforce, Zoho, HubSpot. These are some popular CRMs. I've extensively worked on Zoho and HubSpot. So I am in a state where I can train proper sales managers on how to use CRMs. But then it's spoon feeding. I'll be telling you, do this, click this, click this, how to record your this thing. It's basically a way of documenting data. There's nothing that you can learn in terms of skill, but you will know how to navigate through the entire uh, the CRM, how to create a good pitch. So an ideal pitch, right, Aaron? An ideal pitch is not a monologue. An ideal pitch is a set of traps that you lay, and you figure out how many traps the prospect actually falls, or whatever you lay out for them, are they actually falling into that, or whatever you have planned, is it actually working as per your initial plan? That's what creates an ideal pitch. So ideal pitch becomes, in my opinion, it's not a monologue, it's a dialogue. So the definition of good pitch that you would have seen on multiple movies, this that, is that one guy calling or one guy sitting and speaking for 5 minutes and then people clapping. It doesn't happen in real life. Real life, what actually sells is you ask the right questions, you give them a fact, you give them a question, you get that answer, you connect that answer to another question, and then using that question, you create a net. And using that net, you trap the prospect and tell them, okay, I've heard all your problems, I understand what your problems are, and in my opinion, this is the best solution. Now the best solution, then you pitch your solution. So that's what an ideal pitch, in my opinion, is, and has been working for me. uh Facebook Blueprint is good to learn about Facebook ads. I'm not sure, Vishwas. I'm not aware of it. I've not learned that also. Can we get these PDFs? Yes, just DM me on. I will email it to you. Suggest three people whom you follow or admire from your industry. Like all, I've already spoken to most of them. So in my industry, there's this guy called Yako. Uh, he's he has a company called Winning by Design, and if you follow him on YouTube, you'll see a lot of resemblance in the way he thinks and I think. So I get highly inspired by him. Then I there are two people who've been my mentors in early on in my career. One, her name is Ragini Das. She's the founder of a company called Leap, Leap. She's inspired me a lot. And there's one called Yash Chopra. It's a very cliched name, but then he's one of my closest friends. He heads entire sales for Dine Out Pan India, and these two guys have made a huge, I think, a huge impact in the way I was dealt with early on in my career. Mm, Can you please give a pitch to sell website designing services? I will actually take this up on one of our. We'll do mock pitches for this, or if you could reach out to me on Instagram and tell me more about the services, because I don't want to give you a generic answer. If I give you a generic answer, it wouldn't make sense to you. It wouldn't make sense to me. So give me a little more objective question on my DM, and I'll definitely help you out. For people who've actually DM'd me, they can actually vouch by this. I reply to most DMs, and I actually help them with what they're looking for. Why you left Zomato when even if you were doing great in it? Because I had launched Philippines. I came back. I was the business head of Hyderabad, and in that I was riding a wave, to be honest. So once I was the business head for Hyderabad, Kyofit was another brand which I was very close to. They were offering me a much bigger market. They were offering me entire North India, and at that point, moving to a bigger market made more sense to me. Spoke to a lot of people that I actually admire, and then I eventually landed to the conclusion that yes, I'd want to want to challenge myself, because until then I had never sold anything in North India, in Delhi. So that market was something which I wanted to explore. And after exploring that market, now I can confidently say that I've sold across major metro cities in India. Bombay is still pending, but then major cities in India, in abroad, in Dubai and Philippines. So that actually helps me build up my portfolio, as well as uh, it has provided me with immense sort of learnings. Also, from selling to restaurants, I moved on to selling to corporates. So I was, while in Kyofit, I was able to sell to all top companies. I was dealing with the likes of Apple, Google, Facebook, KPMG, your Kia Motors. These were top corporations and enterprise, B2B enterprise corporations. So that gave me immense learning. I was, rather than pitching in front of one person, most of my pitches were on a giant screen in a conference where there were multiple admin heads, HR heads. They were all sitting in one round table, and I was the one speaking, dealing with all the questions, helping them with providing not generic, general solutions to their problems. And that learning, when I look back, is unparalleled. So even if I had to choose again, I would still take that path. Do you have a podcast? I did one episode of the podcast. Then I decided that I'll do mini portions of the content, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, because the first podcast itself was like an hour long discussion with Yash and I, where we spoke about our career in sales, what we look for in a sales POC, and multiple things surrounding sales. But then expecting people to tune into 1.5 hours of podcast, it didn't make sense, because I was listening to it, and after 45 minutes, I was like, 15 minutes or more left. How will people actually enjoy just listening to something for an hour? So now I'm planning on short content which will give you value bombs, and it wouldn't be a story. You won't probably sleep listening to it, but it will actually invoke some sort of stimulus in you. Oh, Technoid. Oh, thank you so much for sharing my Instagram. Appreciate you, Technoid. Thank you so much. Yes, Vishwas has shared Miss Excel as well. Awesome. Thanks, Vishwas. it is okay to feel that you don't know very much, like coding, digital marketing, data analyst. I want to learn these skills, but should start with what I know best and meanwhile learn. I find time is limited and can't spend shit ton of money for everything on outsourcing. Absolutely right, Pratik. I highly agree with you. Uh, I missed the session. What's the name? I missed your class. Where can I get recording? So yeah, thank you so much. I think I've answered all the questions. It's time for me to log off. Thank you so much. I appreciate each and everyone for contributing and devoting your time to this masterclass. I hope you gained a lot. And in terms of the recording, I think the Avalon Meta team will upload it on their YouTube channel. As soon as they upload it, I will also share it on my relevant social handles. So thank you so much. You've been a lovely audience. I really appreciated the questions that you had asked, and I hope I have been able to instill some sort of clarity in terms of whatever you look or how you perceive sales. Thank you so much. Have a lovely Saturday, guys.